to be here with you this afternoon. And hopefully our conversation will give our listeners some new information about virtual teaching. As we know, we met 3 years ago, and just chance at Classic Pianos, you wandered in and I happened to be there, and we've been friends ever since. And maybe the listeners would like to know just a little quick thumbnail sketch about your impressive background. You came to Portland and retired from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Right.
Where you were head of the keyboard department, and you had a distinguished career as a performing artist and teacher, playing on 4 continents. Those of us in Portland are familiar with your current project with the Ives Concord Sonata, no small task. And just as anyone, just a little bit. And that you have done a lot of online teaching nationally, and you're a great resource.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't say absolutely I'm a great resource. I'll be more modest than that. I wouldn't say I'm a great resource, but I have been doing it a while. And thank you to Susan Todd, who actually approached us to do this conversation. And, you know, I came to online teaching, well, 3 years ago, actually, when I knew I was leaving the university and I knew I was coming to Portland, and I thought I would have more opportunities in terms of teaching if I availed myself of the online opportunities. And boy, am I glad that I did that now, because I have to say, I really feel for the teachers who are now having to scramble and make this, rather large shift. It's a whole different ball game. In some ways it's not, and yet it really is. And so, but I'm here to tell you, if I can do this, anyone can do it. Because I really am not, to put it in nice terms, I am not tech savvy. Yeah. So I was very intimidated and am still intimidated by technology. But when I went through this process, I made sure to have some mentors who were able to help me. And so that is something I think that if one is not tech savvy and comfortable with technology, it is probably imperative, to have someone whom you trust, who can help you, or even getting a professional, and getting their help and advice. And there are many sources. Often parents of students, can be quite knowledgeable. Sometimes the students themselves are.
Oh, definitely.
Are very knowledgeable. So I say, avail yourself freely of them. I had an adult student who was very tech savvy, and we basically experimented together for, a couple months that we worked on this and figuring out, okay, placement of the computer, mic settings, volume settings, all that kind of stuff. And he would give me feedback as to what I was doing that was or wasn't working, which was just truly a great thing. It was wonderful, wonderful assistance.
Well, it's a great resource for people to shorten that learning curve, because absolutely. Many need to get up to speed in, a few days.
Right. And so, you don't want it to take 2 months necessarily. But the reality is, Jill, that as with any new skill, you have to be patient with yourself, cut yourself some slack, and
it's not the truth.
And have a good dose of flexibility on hand, because
sense of humor.
Oh, I frown on that. No humor, ever. I'm a good German. We are very serious. No offense to any German listeners. I am part German, so I feel I can say that. But yeah, of course, absolutely, a sense of humor is critical for most anything, you know, particularly as the more dire and dour things get. Yeah, that sense of humor is really, really important. Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you a few questions then, if I may, and
Hey.
questions that may come from the collective. Okay.
Yes.
How do you set yourself up for a successful experience with online teaching? Some do's, don'ts. What is your broad brush in this?
Well, first, I would say knowing your technology and your resources. So I think maybe talking about an overview of what your options are with that. And I believe there are some other people who are going into great depth in terms of technology. So I don't want to do that because that's really not my strength. But
are you referring to Steve Lewis and his upcoming? Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Right. And I think there may be, I think Susan Todd's daughter-in-law or something. Somebody's doing something that's related to Susan as well. So realizing that, you know, you can use either a phone or a tablet or a laptop. Any of those work. I think a desktop is more problematic since it's not very movable and you have to use an external device. I will tell you, I was told by the fellow who recorded my Leslie Adams CD, who was obviously a professional in terms of recording, he gave me, which I think was great advice. He says, keep it simple. So keep external devices to a minimum, if at all. So he did not recommend using external mics, just the mics that were built in to the phone, into the device that you were using. You know, and if you set
and they become really quite good.
Yeah,
you know,
it is remarkable. But so you really want to with technology, because it can be elusive in terms of its reliability. You want to, you can set yourself for success by keeping it as possible without sacrificing a whole lot of technology, without sacrificing a whole lot of quality.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly recommend doing a trial tech session before you have the first lesson with a student, so that you determine where the student places the computer, because you want to be able to see. I mean, it's really important that you can see at least the upper body of the student, you know, from head all the way through torso. You know, to get the whole legs and whatnot, that gets harder, but you really do want that, because you want to be able to check posture and see how the arms are working and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, setting volume levels.
Sure.
So that you're getting the best sound quality without distortion. And that takes some doing. And knowing too that some devices will have settings called either ambient noise reduction or noise cancellation, and you want to make sure those are turned off, because basically the device sees anything that is not the human voice as noise. So piano playing is noise as far as the device is concerned. It just doesn't know any better. What could we say? You know, it doesn't recognize that a Beethoven sonata is perhaps some great stuff. So turning off that feature is really important. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of, you know, that can be hidden. So you have to go to settings and look that up, and then make sure it's unchecked if that is checked. Sometimes if the connection is, so the connection issue can vary depending on the speed, you know, of the internet and how it's running, and that varies from day to day.
Right. And also with the platform that you're using.
Yes, right. Yeah, I've kept it simple. I've found Skype to have been the one I've found to be most successful in terms of quality and fewer problems than FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
And time you can only do if parties have some kind of an Apple device.
Right.
Where Skype, you both have to download the Skype application, but then you can use it for free. That
As long as both parties have Skype, then
right. And then Zoom is another option, which I have not yet initiated any calls doing it. I have been on group calls now with Zoom.
Yes.
That's becoming
Yes.
it's being quite popular. But again, you don't have to spend lots of money or any money really
Right.
in terms of that, in terms of the platform that you use. So, but just keep in mind that sometimes if the connection starts to go wonky, as it were, the best thing is hang up and call and try again.
Maybe read the computer.
Yeah. Well, sometimes just recalling does it, calling again. Sometimes, yes, you or the other person or both need to restart your computers. And sometimes you have to change to a different device, because I've actually had it happen that people call me and it only comes through on my phone. It doesn't come through on my computer.
It's amazing.
And then, I've had to, on rare occasions, just teach a lesson through the phone, which works. You can do it. But,
It's actually, I had the same experience, and it's surprisingly effective.
Yes, it is. It's of course not great. You can't see the student, obviously, as you can on a computer. I got myself a MacBook Pro because it was a larger screen, and as opposed to a phone. Of course, those come in various sizes as well.
Sure.
So the thing of it is, you sometimes have to try a few times to make things work. And also, I would recommend not stacking lessons, online lessons on top of each other on the hour, because you need to probably leave at least 15 minutes in between in case there's some tech issues, and you want to be able to make that time up. I would say it's been very rare that I've had to just abandon ship and say, okay, we can't do the lesson today. It does happen on very rare occasions, but generally, given these various options that we've outlined, you can make it work, and just have to be aware that and understand that things can and will happen, and that's par for the course. So if you can keep your frustration level down and your expectations, keep down the expectations, then it'll go much better. So.
Well, that's all really, really good advice. What do you think are some of the pitfalls or things to avoid as you move into this system of teaching?
Well, yeah. So I would say that the main thing is realizing that you aren't going to have the same exact experience as you will with an in-person lesson. So you have to make your peace with that. If you expect that you will, or if you're constantly bumping your nose up against that, you're going to be dissatisfied. So again, managing expectations around the medium. You can successfully, I think, teach most anything that you do in an in-person lesson. Even something like fingering. Now, it's true. It is hard to actually, you can't see generally what exactly somebody is doing fingering wise, which you might be able to do in person. But if somebody is struggling, you can certainly ask, and I do ask, okay,
what the heck you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I asked, well, there is that. Right. Then we probe a little more deeply and ask
diplomatically.
Yes, and ask, what fingering are you using? And then I have them actually tell me the finger numbers and the notes. And sometimes we have to do that a few times because that can take a little bit for you to be able to process it. But
Can they, I mean, they can move their device a little closer. That's helpful too.
that would be possible. Yes, that certainly would be possible. And that's another thing that you can have the student move. If they have the room, you can have the device on one side to be more focused on the right hand for some part of the lesson, and then move it to the other side, potentially, to do some left hand work, you know. And so, yes, and then you end up traveling, you know, it's like crossing the ocean, you know, it's a transcontinental kind of experience as you're lifted through the air to your new position, or they drop you. That's not so fun. That's never good to be dropped. But yeah, so you can definitely work on fingering, and you know, it's just such a critical part of our teaching.
Oh yeah.
So pedaling, you know, you can't generally see their foot unless they specifically train their foot. I mean, train the device to look at the foot. And I haven't had anybody do that, because generally I've been able to figure out just from the auditory as to what's going on. You have to manage expectations around tone quality. That, I think, is one of the big challenges that people will find. But you learn to listen differently. You sort of listen through some of the stuff.
Describe that.
Well, you know, it's just, it doesn't have the same immediacy or depth of tone. The computer program will knock out some of the overtones, you know, so it just doesn't have that same, or anything regarding to acoustics in a room. None of that will translate, you know, but you can still tell relative to what they're doing and relative to the experience of online teaching, you know, okay, well, I think that, yeah, your sound might be getting harsh here, you know, or the sound isn't projecting properly. Certainly you can tell if balance is off, but that's all predicated on having the levels worked out to the best of one's ability. Another thing is the softs, I find, the very soft, you know, pianissimo and below can get compromised in that they end up getting flattened out and sounding louder than they are. So you always have to make a reality check. I always ask them, okay, well, I don't always ask, but I will often ask and say, are you hearing this as being really soft on your end? Do you feel, you know, because sometimes they say, yeah, I really can't play softer, you know, but sometimes it's a matter of, well, no, they really could play softer, and they just aren't, you know. But so I'd say the tone quality, sound quality, that can be a challenge, particularly if one is very sensitive, and that if that's a big part of your teaching, and it's certainly a big part of my teaching. But you can definitely deal with technical issues quite effectively, particularly if you can show them, you know. So I think demonstration is important. In fact, I can show you a couple of different ways one can position the computer. So if you, now hopefully you should be able to see most of my keyboard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so then, you know, so you can demonstrate, you know, for some reason I'm in D flat. I don't know why. There. Whoops, see, I went to C and I flubbed. There. Should have stayed in D flat. It's a hard key. But yeah, so you want them to be able to see what you're doing, particularly if you're talking about physical gesture and movement and, you know, hand position, you know, so they're seeing, yes, no, we don't want you playing like this. No, we don't want you playing like that.
Right.
So all these things, so they can see you do it and also hear you do it, you know, so all that is still very much on the table. Now, here's the thing. I am just coming out of a lengthy back injury. And I think one of the reasons it happened was because when you're teaching like this, you get in a bit of a twisted position.
Oh, you're
So
torquing. Yeah.
you have to be careful, because if my body is facing this way and my neck is this way, I'm really, turned.
And
So
repeatedly.
yeah, so you can of course address them this way, and then if you're going to the piano, you can do this. So you're moving your whole body. You're not doing this kind of thing. And I used to have it even over this way, and so the twisting was much worse.
Okay.
So I just mentioned that to people because you don't want to go through what I've been going through. It's really.
And when you're teaching, you don't think about those things. Sometimes you're
think
involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. So where I had you originally was up on my music stand, and that actually works very well if you have a score online that the student sends to you. And I definitely recommend that, particularly for, esoteric 20th century, 21st century pieces or anything that you perhaps don't own. It's always good to have the music. And so what you can do is that you can bring up the score on your computer, and then you will still be able to see the student in the Skype box. So you can. It's a little tricky. You have to get used to monitoring both, but it is possible to do. So of course they can hear if you demonstrate, but they can't see you if you're in this position. However, you can, if you want, see we're moving. And you can then, if you want to just show something in one hand. Can you see me? Can you see my hand?
Problem.
Okay, yeah.
I can see very well.
Right. And so I'm holding
your fingering really well.
Right. So yes, you could, yes. So then you can see, okay, no, we don't want to finger the D flat scale like that. We want to finger it like that. Now we're getting resonance because I'm pushing down the computer's weight is pushing down the keys. So, and obviously you can do the same thing with la main gauche, which is the left-hand concerto, the opening of it, except it was the wrong octave. Can you see? Yeah. So la main gauche, the left hand. Yeah. So those are some options that you can try out. There are times when if I've taught when I don't have a piano, particularly when I'm away, obviously, and then, I just do it from a desk. And there's lots of singing and gesticulating. And people have said that it's surprisingly effective. So, but what you need to do, particularly if you're someone who's perhaps a little more conservative with your energy and your vocal production, is you definitely have to ramp that up, because you are, you don't have the immediacy of being in the same room, so you do want them to feel engaged,
right,
and feel your vibe, if we
right.
want to use a nice California term,
right.
And so you've got to ramp it up a bit.
You don't feel your physical presence sitting next to them as they do in a lesson.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Though I've had people tell me they actually enjoy the immediacy of the computer, because the computer is close to them, and so in essence I'm much closer to them than I would be in a physical lesson. So
great.
It's just interesting how people perceive that. I'll tell you, Jill, what I found doesn't work, which I like to do when I have two pianos, is you cannot play along with a student.
Right.
That does not work because they can't hear you.
Right.
It's just so that's not possible, unfortunately. And you also have to sort of work out a way. If you have a loud voice, they could probably hear you if you're saying you want them to stop. But if not, then perhaps you work out a system where you're clapping, or I guess you could ring a little bell, but that might seem too servant-like. So I don't know. At any rate, but these are
No, we
all
have
things that
to know, because we would normally just say, okay, let's stop and we'll go back. They may not be able to hear that
they
as
may
well.
not be able to hear. Well, and you'll know because they'll keep playing.
Yes, exactly.
You know, but so all this takes some adjusting on your
Yeah.
part and the part of the student.
Mhm.
All the things that flow easily in an in-person lesson will not initially flow as easily, but in time it does, you know,
Yeah.
and then it becomes as natural to, you know, to me, I don't, you know, I still prefer to give an in-person lesson, absolutely, particularly because, you know, you can touch the person when you're trying to check for tension or make adjustments in terms of technique
Right.
or posture or alignment, all those things. And I tell you, it's so much easier to just go over and go poke, you know, and you can't, unfortunately, go poke through the, the computer. Now, wouldn't that be great if your hand could come out the other end? Possibly a tad frightening, but it would be highly effective. I mean, we're living in times when we're living sci-fi stuff anyway, so why not?
And we have absolutely no alternative, no
No,
in-person lessons.
no,
So we can't throw this out. We have to find our way into this.
we really do, and I really do feel for everybody, and you know, I'm sorry that we're in these times and having to deal with this. But you are absolutely right. It is simply not an option at
And we
this.
can't abandon our students. We need to be there for them and move the cause forward.
Well, and they have even more, you know, they have more time on their hands as well, generally. So I think it's super important that people can stay grounded and connected with music, you know, and this
Absolutely.
does give us the opportunity to do that, you know.
And with that extended time, they can practice more, they can be more with their music. You can add sight reading more extensively than you normally can. I mean, you can still follow the curriculum.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for mentioning that, because yes, you can do sight reading and theory still through these methods.
Tell us a little bit about the overview of curriculum.
Overview of curriculum. What in terms of?
So with your online teaching,
What I would do with a student.
Keep in place. You've mentioned.
Yeah. Generally, yeah,
we go over that for everyone.
Right. So with I would generally start. Well, I give the students some choice, but you know, sight reading seems to be a good way to start, and then potentially you can go into some technique work if you want to start moving.
Scales, arpeggios.
Right. Whatever you are wanting them to do. And as I say, it really works surprisingly well to be able to monitor those kind of things. Perhaps because we're not as focused in the same way on sound, so we're more focused visually.
Oh,
so
interesting.
So we start to notice those things. I think, you know.
Well, that makes sense.
To notice those things even more. Theory, you know, you could have them send you things, you know, send them to you in advance, or they could take a picture of it and send it to you via a phone. I've had people actually just, you know, show me their assignment, you know, and we talk through it. Get the lighting right so we can tell.
Whatever works.
What are these ledger lines, and what's going on here, and what is that chord supposed to be? Because I don't think it's matching up with what my assignment was. I had that happen recently. It's like,
oh,
wait, that's a half. That's supposed to be. What kind of seventh chord is this supposed to be? Because this doesn't look like any seventh chord that I'm familiar with in this universe. Maybe in an alternate one, but in this universe, that doesn't add up to any kind of seventh chord. Anyhow.
So really, the thing you're saying that you miss is ensemble playing. You can't do two piano. You can't do four hand. You can't play along with them. But that's not a huge loss. I mean, we can find our way in other.
you could still have, no, I was going to say you could have students get together, but no, in these times, unless they're siblings,
Right.
then they shouldn't be doing ensemble work, you know.
So
So
how do you address the issue of providing performance opportunities, which is a critical part of our curriculum, your weekly playing class or your monthly master class or whatever? What are some suggestions about what people can do to get students, adults, young people, whatever, playing on a regular basis as we do in our own teaching?
well, they can avail themselves of their immediate families,
Right.
of course. And then I would say, now I don't have experience with this, but you could use Zoom, the Zoom platform, where you can have up to 3 people on a call for free. But any more than that, then I think it's $15 or $20 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But they could all, you know, dial in, as it were, download the app, and then you could
have a playing class.
have a master class, and everybody would see and hear the person who's playing, you know. So yes, it would be possible. It would be possible. As I say, I have not yet tried to do that, but
Well, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last.
right.
Will it level off? Will it give us a break in the summer? Will it come back? We don't know. So we have to be prepared. I think, I don't know, long term perhaps, just so we have things in place.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, preparedness, and again, the flexibility thing is
Absolutely.
really key, you know, for this. So yeah, so I would say, in terms of what I like about the online teaching, you know, it's simple in a way, because you just do it. You don't have to prepare in the same way, you know.
You don't have to alter your well-grounded and established curriculum.
Right, exactly, you know. And I think there are a lot of benefits for the students. They don't have to deal with driving, parking, gas
Weather.
expenses, weather. Yes, yeah, all of those things, which are an issue, you know.
Yes.
Um,
That's
so
the
I
silver
think
lining in a way.
it is. The drawbacks are, of course, it is not the same experience as in person, but you can adapt to that. You can adapt to that so that you can, you know, teach successfully. I mean, I've done pretty high level coachings via the internet, you know. So, and, you know,
And around the country. So you have a sense about different regions. And I
right,
also think, at least from my own experience, that if you're working with your students that know you well, they know what to do. I had a student who said to me, "Oh, I know what you're going to say. Oh, I know what you're going to do." Okay, well, that was disappointing. But at the
right,
same time, they were relaxed. They were like, "Okay, let's do this. We're going to figure it out."
right. You know, I have had people who start with me, you know, start lessons. I mean, not from the very beginning, but that we begin lessons and it's just through the internet because of distance. And, you know, it's not a problem, really. You
It's
know,
good.
I mean, again, it takes them some time to get used to it, you know, but then they're like, oh, okay, you know, they're like, okay, this is good. It works, you know. So everybody take heart. You know, it is something that I
Well,
think.
you're a resource for all of us too, and people can find you through your website, www.otten, OTTEN, .studio. So they
Right.
know where you
Or
can.
yes. Or they can, I'm happy if people want to email me with questions or comments.
Sure.
So yeah, that's Thomas, my first name, at Otten, my last name, .studio as well. So that's an email that they can use. So yeah, I'm very happy to be a resource, in any way that I can.
That's wonderful.
With these things, because I do get it that it is a scary time and that this transition can be intimidating for a lot of people.
I think, if we were to have a postlude in our conversation,
Yes.
This is also an opportunity for us to support our students in broader ways through expanded reading lists, recordings that we can recommend that they listen to, projects that they can do at home. Speak to that. What are the opportunities that we wouldn't normally have in teaching, but also to give beauty and joy and support to our students in this time?
Well, you just mentioned reading, and I'd like you to tell us about what's going on with you and your book situation, because you're having some activity there. So tell us about that.
Well,
so
let's see.
Books.
My book is an excellent resource.
Well, it is.
Well, it is, I think. I wrote it to be a resource anyway, but it came out in 2013. It's The Musician's Journey, and it's Oxford University Press, and it has actually done quite well. And so I'm in the process now of preparing the second edition. So you can still get the book in the first edition. Second will probably be out in about a year. Although if the pandemic continues, it might be out next week. I have time to write. Yes. Anyway, we all have our favorite lists. I think everyone should read the 3-volume biography on Liszt, Alan Walker, and of course, Alan Walker's fantastic new book on Chopin. Yeah, those are a couple of my favorites. Todd Schultz's book, New York Times writer, Chopin in Paris. You can't put it down. It's incredible. How about you? What are you reading?
Boy, well, I tell you, these sound like great suggestions. Truthfully, I am more of a non-music person reader. So
what excites you? What are you drawn to?
So I love John Steinbeck. So I've just read some Steinbeck, Tortilla Flats, and then there's a sequel to that, Sweet Thursday, which is not well known. So I read the two together. So that was really fun. Bill Bryson is one of my favorite authors. Who's a humorist and talks a lot about language, so he's how certain words and phrases came to be. He wrote From a Sunburned Country about Australia. That's just laugh out loud funny. The most recent thing I read of his was Notes from a Small Island. He lived for a long time in the UK. And his wife is British, and then they were going to be moving back to the States, and then he traveled around England, one last hurrah, and wrote about the experience. And it's just
it sounds marvelous.
It's just his insights and the way he writes. He uses language wonderfully, and what I enjoy about his writing is that sometimes he's just very obscene. In terms of how so he has no problem, using polysyllabic words and then throwing in, a few well-placed, you can imagine. And I love that kind of juxtaposition, shall we say.
Writing.
Yeah, some might find it offensive. So just FYI, not all of his books contain this lower the lower realm, shall we say. But he's fun. And David Sedaris, I think, a wonderful humorist, Augustin Burroughs. And so I think those are great resources in these times as well.
Absolutely.
When you want to have a little bit of levity, But in terms of music books, I did read the new Debussy biography that came out.
Yes, Roberts.
Yeah, a year or so ago, and I did enjoy that. But that's it's complex stuff. It's not.
And sometimes you need brain candy.
Right. Exactly. So I think people have a variety of options in terms of that. But Yeah, there's no need to be bored.
Ever. Ever.
Right. And at least we can still go for walks. That's a big part of what I do. I really try it. I think, physical exercise, getting out is so important.
Being out in nature.
And we are still allowed to do that, evidently, from what you're saying. In Barcelona, they can't.
No, that's over. I just talked to my colleague Ludovica Mosca, and it's very grim. So we will hope that our pandemic curve will flatten out and we'll move on from this soon.
Yes.
In the meantime, I want to thank you for being available to do this. I want to thank Susan Todd, of course, who is always at the helm helping OMTA. It's been such a delight.
Well, thank you, Jill, for serving as moderator, as it were. So, because it certainly is much more pleasant for me to speak to a real person on the other end, as opposed to the vast emptiness. That's not nearly as much fun. And yeah, I just, to everyone out there, stay safe and all best in, getting through this the best that you can.
Absolutely.
And yeah, keep playing, keep making music, because that's what makes, one of the things that makes life, worth living and really enriches us, in a very deep and meaningful way.
Absolutely. So. Well, thank you so much, Tommy.
You bet. All righty. So then, till our next conversation.
Very good.
All right. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye, everyone.